Welcome to Risk Roundup. The revolution in information, communication, and digitalization technologies, processes, and connected computers is altering everything from how we communicate, make friends, to how we work, bank, shop, and go to war. The emergence of this whole new world of cyberspace has given nations, its governments, industries, organizations, academia, and individuals, in short referred to as NGIOAI, great promise as well as great peril. As the world is undergoing a profound and lasting shift in the relative balance of power among nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia, in short referred to as NGIOA, the evolution in cyberspace will offer each nation as many opportunities as it does challenges. The connected computers, information and communication technology, and digitalization capability of information that are revolutionizing each component of a nation and every aspect of a society have leveled the playing field and brought each nation an unprecedented possibility of progress. What needs to be seen is whether in the level playing field, how will each individual nation be able to compete and lay a new foundation for lasting prosperity or just decline. In cyberspace, what is common to all is technology and information and access to it. But what is not common is how one uses that information for what purpose and goals. While cyberspace has given nations the same starting point in access to technology and information, there are many other variables in geospace that will determine whether a nation will be able to use the information from cyberspace to develop, progress, and succeed in cyberspace, geospace, and space, in short referred to as CGS. Cyberspace has brought each NGIOA to a juncture of revival and reformation or inexorable decline. Nations that are ruled by governments that destroy incentives, discourage innovation, and sap the talent of their citizens by creating a tilted playing field and robbing them of opportunities will eventually die from within. Similarly, nations that have been built on exploitation will inevitably fail in cyberspace, taking an entire corrupt system down. So the question is, what can any individual nation do independently and collectively to improve its competitive and innovative position in the world, thereby tipping the scale of cyberspace in its favor? To discuss this further, I am honored to welcome Professor Valerio de Luca. Professor Valerio is currently the Director of Global Security and Foreign Affairs Program, a joint program Academy Aises and American Studies Center at Rome. He is also the Secretary General at DIPLOMATIA, Rome, and Executive President at Leader Platform, London. He is also the co-founder and chairman of the International Academy for Social and Economic Development and director of the Global Rules, Ethics and Economics Network that involved many research centers at London School of Economics, Sciences Po of Paris, La Sapienza University of Rome, Strathmore Business School of Nairobi. Welcome, Professor Valerio. We are so honored to have you on Risk Roundup.
Good morning.
So, Professor Valerio, the world is expected to face extraordinary changes in the coming years, with growth as the only constant in those changes. In cyberspace, growth means more people, more devices, more connectivity, data, opportunities, as well as risk. Now, the emerging trends in the cyberspace reflect significant shifts of players and actions in the cybersphere that reveal the reconfigurations of interest, influence, and investments in the cyber domain of global politics and power play. What shifts do you see in the world politics and power, if any?
In our century, there is a new subject on the scene of the history. This subject is technology. The technology is reshaping our relationship, the nature of the man and the relationship among different states. And this means that we have to manage these changes that are reshaping our lives. And also, not only And this important revolution has given power to individuals, enhancing freedom and a lot of opportunities. But on the other hand, there are vulnerabilities, risks that also are global and we need to share. So, if I can use a metaphor, this subject is like a child that after he has to walk alone and start to become autonomous, and we have to try to manage and control. Otherwise, we lose these opportunities. So we are facing a lot of challenges, and in particular, the new international world order is reshaping itself, comparing these challenges in technology and innovation.
Yes, that's a very good point you made there, Professor Valerio. Now, it's reported that about close to 50% of the world population is digitally connected today. And in the coming years, almost close to 100% of people in developed nations, as well as about 70%, close to 70% of those in developing nations are expected to be using the connected computers and internet. Internet dependence is just becoming like an electricity dependence, and it is not just a concept anymore, but rather the new digital global age reality. Now, this new digital global age reality brings each one of us an entirely new world full of opportunities and risks. What will be the expected consequences at each level, that is global, regional, national, and local?
The concept, I think that the major issue is security, and the security, even local and national, is now a global common good. So, at any level, we need to cooperate and share information, to share technologies. Also, the knowledge is a common good and research are common good. So we live in the era of cooperation and coordination. We need a multilateral approach at the international level and also at federal one. Of course, this is an hope to do so, but as you know, especially among nations, the isolation and fragmentation also is an issue important, because the fear sometimes prevail on the hope and to the I would say the duty to cooperate and coordinate. For example, to give you an example, in Europe we have the problem of terrorism, and the problem is the problem of coordination comes from the fact that we don't share information about the intelligence system. We don't have a unique Department of Defense. So, on one hand, globally, we have to compete with strong actors like US and Asia countries, Russia, and Europe, that is an important ally of these forces, have a problem of competition in that field because of the inside fragmentation. So this is an issue that maybe we can talk later.
Yes, yes, no, that is absolutely true. You know, that is so very true. And we see that all across nations. Now, nations are beginning to understand the implications of the evolving cyberspace ecosystem far beyond, you know, their normal user counts, like how many users are using it, crossing economic, education, governance, and trade policies entirely. Now, while the relationship between the national policy and cyberspace is very complex and at times indirect, the force and pace of technological change that we see and that is expected in the coming years will present each and every nation challenges and opportunities for all its components, that is government, industries, organizations, academia, and individuals. How do you see the current and emerging technological change transforming the entire global power dynamics?
Yes, the investment in knowledge, research, innovation is represent the competitive advantage of the big nations, of course, any level, and so it means that the country like, for example, US, that has invested in a lot of money on this sector. In particular, we know that, for example, in cyberspace, the Obama administration has invested a lot as a problem of national security, and it means, and also the UK, that the case of UK, they also established a specific unit and a program of defense on this. This means that this important power among the world will support industry, education at the top level. For example, as we know that the US is one of the most important in terms of higher education, in terms of investment in science, research, and innovation. Take the case of a small country, for example, Israel, that because of the problem of terrorism and defense, they investing a lot in the defense system, the innovation, and also in the education. And there are spillovers on the industries. A lot of discoveries and trademarks come from this important investment in the innovation sector and in the research. And but on the other hand, at global level, there is an hegemony of some countries that can be in some way a problem to approach to other important countries, for example, to set up an international standards. So just some days ago, I had the opportunity to have stay in a round table and to introduce some topics about cybersecurity, and some of these participants coming from in the industry, government, also at the local level, have some fear about the hegemony and the trend that some hegemonic country can put on the table. So it's important the shift that the global power are facing, and we have to understand and to reach some equilibrium on that level, because on one hand we have some important countries that have the capacity are able to innovate and compete with their industry, the strategic industry. On the other hand, we have some countries that are not investing as a priority in some sector. So we have to try to find common ground for this, and not to use the power to prevail, but leading by example, leading by values, and to cooperate all each other.
Yes, no, that is very true. You know, we do have to find the common ground, and I hope that they are able to do it. Now, what are the strategic trends that you see across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, geospace, and space? Because there are so many changes happening so rapidly. So, based on your analysis, what are the strategic trends that you see?
The strategy is first of all, to facilitate the investment in some important sector. As I was saying, the most important countries decide to invest in research, in science, and to find the good rule of law that can incentivize by, for example, using taxes or give some incentives to some special sectors. And I like in this interview to compare Europe and United States and other important countries. We have the problem of the public debt, the crisis, economic crisis in Europe and in Italy, has really weakened our capacity to invest in research, in education, and innovation. We have also the state aid regulation that put limits on the to invest in companies that are strategic from the government. So in Italy and in Europe, we don't have the strong the opportunity to put the public money in the private sector and to innovate, to incentive, because this kind of incentive and stimulus can be considered a problem that weaken the European competition. So the law of competition and intellectual property, trademarks play a very important competitive advantage in this field. So also the rule of law, the standard, international standards are very important to at the global level to set up these new agreements. For example, the TTIP, the new transatlantic agreement, could be an opportunity. Is that there is an opportunity with the US and Europe to, in some way, develop some international standard on this issue.
Yes, no, those are some really good, very important points that you made that do affect, the strategic trends in the geospace. But at the same time, also the cyberspace is moving so rapidly, and we have such a expansion in the usage of internet globally, and mobile phones and cloud platforms and data center operations and management and biometric authentication and increasing. And privacy and confidentiality challenges that each nation face. So there are a lot of things going on in cyberspace, and the growing cyber attacks. They are all creating very significant impact across the cyberspace, geospace, and space. So we'll have to see how those strategic trends impact each individual nation and how they impact them. Now, how should any nation or any and all of its components, that is government, industries, organizations, and academia, evaluate and prepare for the impact of a digital global age?
In particular, I think that the problem of velocity and the implementation of technology put a severe challenge to the civil rights, in general the human rights, privacy for the consumers, and in some way to the dignity of the people. We should think about the healthcare system and the technology applied to the healthcare and problem of privacy, or how is important the management of the big data and the Internet of Things that now is connected more than 5 billion of devices in this year. So we have that's why I told that we have to lead by values and to lead by to have very clear that the technology is an instrument to pursue prosperity, security, and the protection of human rights. But if the technology became an end that include all the other hands, the problem is that the shift is from a mean to end, and the hand of human rights and prosperity maybe became vulnerable, and so we risk to achieve some important technology improvement. We risk to limit privacy, the dignity of the person, and to use not empower values that are at the basis of our civilization.
Yes, no, those are, you made some really good points there, Professor Valerio, and I think each and every nation will have to evaluate some very quick key questions, like what are the global mega trends emerging in cyberspace that will lead to bigger change over the next decade? Now, how will these trends impact information and communication technology? and how will it impact the respective nations? Now, will these predictions be accurate enough that the policymakers at all levels, global, national, local, that they will be able to anticipate how today's choices will lead to different futures results in cyberspace? So these are a lot of questions each and every nation will have to evaluate and come to proper analysis to be able to take a step forward. Now, the growth in cyberspace is driven and shaped by a number of variables and external factors, many of which can be amplified or influenced by public policy choices that are made at the global, national, or regional or local levels. Now, as artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing, the Internet of Things, big data, and cybersecurity loom large on almost each and every nation's agenda, it is important to evaluate the transformative elements that will define the future terrain of cyberspace and geospace in each individual nation. How will public policies impact potential cyber growth? What are the tectonic shifts that will impact cyberspace and cybersecurity in general? And how will policies expand or contract opportunities for that nation and that particular region? So, do you think that these are the kind of questions each and every nation are trying to evaluate from your perspective?
I think that this is a problem of the culture. To give you an example, in Italy, our Prime Minister is investing a lot on technology. He's a 14 years old man, and he's used to have to use the technologies and to be on social networks and to invest on this culture. For the next month, we will have the Internet Summit, and he last month he launched the broadband, the connection that will cover in 20 years all Italy for velocity and connection on internet. He wants to start a cybersecurity agency. So, of course, this is the government and nation take count on this because they know that improving the growth of innovation and technologies, this means the spillovers on jobs creation and the important improvement in sectors like health and welfare in general. But on the other hand, we have to be conscious about the fact that, for example, the introduction of this important innovation can also have some risk. Give you an example: the replacement of machine for the job, the problem of technological unemployment. Also, for example, the driverless car will have an important impact on the insurance sector. And you mentioned the education. The online education will be always more and more impact the university. So we have always to balance the downside of this new innovation. And as you know, the politics, prime minister, the government have also to look at the electoral cycle that is very short, the election cycle. So some of important regulation or innovation, that are important in the long term. Maybe they don't want to get the risk to introduce immediately because there can be a disadvantage for the next election. So politics take in important consideration the role of technologies in the growth, but on the other hand, they have a short view, short-termism. They look at the political cycle, and so sometimes we have to manage the importance of to introduce important innovation in technology and to look to the future, also near. On the other hand, the problem that we face, for example, for the job creation, the welfare, that maybe can give them a feedback on votes immediately instead of other important innovation that the spillover you will see in the future.
No, that I'm so pleased to hear the kind of leadership that your nation's government is showing, and I hope that more nations show that kind of leadership to prepare themselves for the digital global age, and that is really good to know that, Professor Valerio. Now, while most nations sees an increased frequency of cyber attacks on its assets and has taken some measures to secure its digital assets and infrastructure, the effort seems to be only like a drop in the ocean. It seems that the mere effort of nations' investment in security technology innovations and promoting voluntary public-private partnership is not enough anymore, and it is far from answering all the complex challenges of the cyber threat or cyberspace as they exist today. The complex challenges are making it increasingly clear that each nation should individually and collectively identify, understand, evaluate, and manage its security vulnerabilities in not only cyberspace but also in geospace and space, that is CGS. However, nations lack an integrated security risk management framework currently. No nation has that. How can cybersecurity risk be effectively managed when we don't have effective security-centric integrated risk management framework?
As I mentioned before, the two countries like UK and US, they are investing in risk management and in education, in partnership, public-private partnership and program with the industry, the private sector. And in Italy and in Europe, it's not the same. So the idea is to invest in the prevention, to prevent the risk and the attacks that, as you told before, is so invisible, so is everywhere that we can detect, we can prevent and control. So the role of the intelligence, also the economic intelligence, to control and to have some mechanism of risk management inside the most important strategic industries, or the defense and interior department, to use also this kind of important mechanism of risk management, of course, will help to detect and to help this kind of attacks. But also it's important to invest in the culture of the individuals, because also the individuals have to be conscious of this problem. So I thought as a European and Italian, we don't have this kind of culture now, that the fact that we have to be conscious about these cyber attacks, the fact that companies have to be conscious about this problem. And as you know, most of the companies and the industry that are attacked by this problem don't say publicly that they are attacked by this because of problem of reputation. So on some end, we have the problem that this kind of information are kept it private and managed inside. And so we don't have the opportunity to share this kind of information. And on the side of the department, we have the problem of sharing information among countries, information that are very important, very sensitive on this issue. So even if we are experiencing this age of terrorism in Europe, and particularly in Italy, to invest in the prevention, so invest to talk to the media and to try to use the intelligence sector to detect and to coordinate inside the nation is one of the most important things.
Yes.
And for another example is to give you another example, It's important to control and to protect the strategic infrastructure of the country. To give you an example, Italy has the telecom, the most important company on telecom. Now in Italy, the control is now in the French hand. So just 2 weeks ago, the most important telecom company that has strategic interest and on its infrastructure pass all services and data and information that are sensitive now are in the hand of the French. So it's also important to do this because sometimes some countries like Italy and other Europe are vulnerable because of the crisis on the economic side, also on the social one. So it's important also to control and to keep safe this strategic infrastructure, and also the government has to protect them. Because if we leave these important issues in the hand of only on the private side, the profit risk to be the center of the interest, not the public in the public sphere. So this is some important points that I like to touch, just to stress the problematic that we are facing in Italy and in Europe.
Yes, that's really good information that you provided there. Now, although cyberspace has the potential to transform NGIUAI and society, there are possibilities of failure. A failure to fulfill the potential of technology to positively transform nations. Because of concerns about cybersecurity, cyberspace potential could be thwarted by protectionist economic policies and government resistance to the rapidly changing technological environment. Now, this could inhibit cooperation and isolate nations. Instead of taking advantage of projected cyber growth, governments could restrict technology, trade, control the flow of information. Is there a possibility of such response because of the challenges that we see in cyberspace and cybersecurity? What impact do you see if such actions prevail?
I think so. This is a good question because when the fear prevail on the hope and on the coordination and the cooperation among state, among the individual, among the industries, that they want to, of course, protect their national security and trademark and so on. Of course, is comprehensible that that will happen. And because all of the next, I would say, the present, the competition, the competitive advantage will put at the center technology, innovation, and research. Of course, some of the big champions in the industry sector, in the government, will try to isolate the other from sharing information and technology. To give you an example, China, we know how China is some way, on one hand, investing on technology and innovation. On the other hand, are isolating the other country from this improvement. For example, Korea, South Korea, the possible attack on the nuclear weapon in Korea is a way that represent the isolation and the fragmentation in the Asian side. So sometimes I think that there are possibility of failure. This kind of failure come from the fear of some nation that culturally are isolated in the global scenario, and on the other hand, the countries that are strong, that are investing in this kind of important innovation like cybersecurity, will try to keep the technology by themselves because they keep their competitive advantage that they don't want to share. Before I give you the example of US and UK, that they are investing a lot culturally, ethically, financially, but they are trying to set up the standard for the world. So on one end, it's good because we are investing in that field of the cybersecurity. On the other hand, countries feel fear to share important information about infrastructure, about some political secret, I would say, the government sensitive information. So it's always it's important to realize that sometimes this important driver of innovation could be fail not because we don't have the instrument, but because of the distrust of national level, government level, and also individual level. So the problem of the trust is in my opinion, is at the center, at the core of the problem of coordination, and it can fail because of this.
Yes, yes, yes. No, that is very, very true. Now, many nations lack necessary cyber infrastructure. The lack of digital infrastructure in turn discourages opportunities and innovation in cyberspace and geospace, making it very difficult to adequately address nations' cybersecurity needs, leaving each of its components with outdated information, communication, and digital technology, and make them vulnerable to cybersecurity threats. So when cybersecurity and challenges and cyber attacks plague governments, instead of managing cybersecurity risks to support private and public economic growth in CGS, governments tend to invest resources in cyber defense technologies for their public institution, and that is understandable, but they are at times outdated. So how can there be a proper balance of cyber defense and cyber growth for nations?
This is a very important balance to achieve. As I was saying before, the financial and economic crisis in Europe put the governments to set up priorities and to invest money in defense, in the defense sector and in important infrastructure, not only material but also immaterial one. It's really a problem because on one end we have to pursue the growth and with the job creation and to social cohesion, and we lose the sense of the role of the vulnerability that come from the cyberspace. So I think that I'm pessimistic in the area where I live, that this balance, we can't reach this balance in this moment for many reasons. So it's an important problem, but in this period of time, the priority for Europe, for Italy, and then all in the Mediterranean are problems that are related to the social side. So, for example, the flows of migration is a priority that, of course, involve the problem of defense, because a lot of terrorists come inside these flows of migration. But we are more interested to solve the problem of the migrants as a whole, that to put attention of this problem of terrorist attack and so on. So I think that we have to realize that as in, for example, in Israel or US, that we can achieve prosperity and the growth investing in research, defense, innovation, and this is an important spillover on this. So, as you know, internet comes from important investment in the defense sector, and all the major idea come from the state. I read recently an important book called Startup Nation, and explain how Israel became an important state as an innovator, and how all the growth, the prosperity in that country that doesn't have primary resources, there are desert and so on, come essentially from education, innovation, research. And so this is the case that can have to bring to the attention of the governments. But this balance, I think that it will be very difficult to reach in Europe, and we will lose the competitive advantage in confront, not say, of course, is confront US, but the problem if we lose the competitive advantage comparing to our enemies, I mean, Arab countries and other Asian countries that maybe are different interest in the scenario about us. So we have to lose, we have to have a vision of the long term, and not to look at our particular problem, and we have to share also this vision in Europe, and I think that US has a leadership on that side.
Right. No, that is very important analysis that you made there, and I hope that nations can learn from that and make some good use of that. Now, it is known that cyberspace risks are not just from the commonly recognized sources such as cyber criminals, malware, or even at times state-sponsored cyber attacks, as they also can emerge from a nation's policies. Now, nations' digitalized response to education and workforce needs, governance models, information sharing, trade liberalization, as well as international cooperation to resolve cyber conflict will likely shape the future of cyberspace across nations. Now, based on your observation, which nation leads in the race to the digital global age?
As I said before, the most of the nations that are leading this important sector, that for me, that I'm going to learn every day more, and is very important, the cybersecurity, because of the importance of the different spaces that connects our lives, is very important on this. And if you look to US and Israel again, and China, that are all the most important countries that are leading the world. So it's a combination between the leadership, the will to prevail to set up vision globally, and with the investment on cyberspace and innovation. UK, that is close to Europe, is invested 800, maybe kind like of 900 of pounds, millions, to set up a program and a department on this. They want to make safe and secure and help this the cyberspace. They are setting up a program with industries, partnership program, to dialogue, to share information, and also they are building skills and capacities, and we are investing in education. So if the government understand that they should have an holistic approach on that problem, not only to see the cyberspace on the technical side, but understand that this is not the future, but the present, they can understand that right now that investing in education, research, knowledge, and the health sector, and to put at the center the innovation will be an important thing. So I'm happy because Italy and Europe are very close allied to US, and we have also to see that also Russia as an important player are investing a lot on this important in the engineering side, and also could be an important support for Europe on the defense side. So in the future, the strategic role of investment in cybersecurity could play an important role in the equilibrium at the global level. So, only the big and important country that have money and the public money to invest in that sector can culturally do so, like the US, can achieve an important leading and strategic role. Of course, as I said at the beginning, the most important thing is not to lose the values, the universal values, and the vision that these important countries have to protect. So we don't have to lose this important purpose, because sometimes to achieve some important goals in the technology and innovation sector, we lose the most important values that have to inspire the action of the important state.
Oh, that is a very good information you provided, and I hope that close working relationship between the nations that you just talked about, we see more of that across nations to be able to manage the security challenges that we face in cyberspace, and because of cyberspace in geospace and space. So there is a hope, it seems. Now, the growth of social media, e-commerce, and e-governance has made cyberspace policy a very critical issue across nations. Now, while cyberspace is currently an area where almost no rules of engagement apply, each nation will face difficulties in creating a stable environment for conflicting national opinions regarding freedom of internet, application of international law, and problems associated with the origin of these security challenges. So, while information and cyberspace has no borders and no recognized rules of engagement yet, or global regulations or regulatory body, data has its origin, ownership, and boundaries. So there are many, including nations, states, freelancers, criminals, and terrorists, that consider cyberspace outside the pale of global jurisdiction. And while some agreements have emerged concerning cybercrime, interpretation of cyber warfare remains outside any binding legal obligation. In the absence of a consensus on cyber norms, every nation, its government, industries, organizations, and academia, and individuals, that is NGIOAR, they are all at risk. How should this be addressed?
This is the cyberspace is the kingdom of freedom. So it's always a problem to limit this flow of information, and of course, the problem of privacy, problem of cybercrime, also an ideological and anarchic approach on the cyberspace can sometimes put problem on the freedom of speech and to limit flows of services and so on. But this is the challenge that we face, because the thing that the most important thing is also a cultural one. So it's important that millennials, native digitals, and also important authority like the school and academia and other important, and also the media, can educate people with the right use of the information, and also to educate people and young and students how to use correctly, and to be conscious about the instrument. Not, I don't want to say that they have to, in some way, to control or to, in some way, to influence that use. But it's very important that we know what are the risks and the vulnerabilities that come from the cyberspace. So, the challenge is also not to put too much regulation and to balance, make a balance among the hard regulation, I would say, the regulation of internet, and how much is important to live with regulation with the private sector. It's also a balance of the self-regulation between self-regulation and on the other hand, the regulation. The ethics is also important. The ethics or ethics of conduct in that issues. If we leave, for example, the freedom of speech to don't limit this. On the other hand, the private sector or some authorities have to control the criteria and the standard. So this is a real challenges on these issues because involve the freedom of the individuals on one end, and the other one, sometimes the necessity of the public sector to control. So in this kind of confrontation of forces, we will measure the success of our culture in the cyberspace.
Yes, no, this is a very difficult challenge for each and every nation. Now, each nation has a great talent and creative power. However, there are only few nations that are expected to benefit from the cyberspace and due to cyberspace. Why is that so? Why would not all the nations benefit from cyberspace?
It's always a problem of culture. Again, to give you an example that could be a contradiction, as you know, Italy is maybe the country of can be considered as a creative. We have a lot of in design and in fashion, and we had a lot of small and medium enterprises that are succeeding in the world as a very competitive in that important field. Also, we have an important position in art and music and so on. So the fact that a country has an important role as a talented nation, talented individual, and in the creative area. On the other, it doesn't mean that they are stimulated by or they have an improved cyberspace role in the scenario. I would say that in Italy we don't have this kind of culture about internet. Because about education, some years ago we passed the idea that we have to learn English, we have to learn informatics, and so on. So it's not come together the fact that there is a talented and creative people, and together to understand that cyberspace could be an important space where they can express their talent. So this is a challenge for our nation, and we look to some important, for example, in Asia. To give you another example, they are hard workers. They are people that studying a lot. They are invested a lot in education. They are not so much creative, but they are achieving an important standard in that field, in the field of cyberspace. So I think that to invest in education and in research is at the beginning in the schools, and it's important to have an important standard of life, but it's also important for the growth of a nation.
Yes, yes, no, that is very true. Now, in a digital global age, only cyberspace innovators, entrepreneurs, and businesses can or are expected to achieve and sustain competitive advantage by recognizing the central role of innovation. The uncomfortable truth that innovation grows out of pressure and challenges, like what NGIOAI, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations, academia, and individuals, are facing now in cyberspace, is very complex and challenging for most nations. However, what better time than now when everyone and everything is at risk because of cyberspace? Do you think that NGIOAI leadership will be able to create a dynamic, collaborative, open, and challenging environment, or create policies to diminish the impact of cyberspace to maintain the status quo? What would happen?
I think so. I think that the civil society, the academia, and the private sector can do more than itself than the public sector. The coordination among universities, the shared economy, the knowledge, the share of ideas, sharing ideas and knowledge could be for sure an impulse to create an important common place where ideas and creations and research solution, pragmatic solution can be achieved. So I trust in the power of individuals and in the civil society to self-organize and to find some important ways to cooperate and coordinate. And I think that to find important channel of collective action on these issues could be important. We can look, for example, to the Arab Spring. Even if they failed, we saw how was important the role of individuals and collecting data to achieve some important results. So they disintermediate completely the state in this. So the technology and important the academia and civil society, because of technologies, they will be empowered their freedom and their capabilities.
Yes.
The important thing is that the people have to be conscious about this. If they don't know that they can be empowered, they can be, they're not only the state, but also other individuals. They are isolated. They can't have the perception of how much important is the technologies and the use of technologies if people join in achieve some important goals, even against the government and against some multinationals. So the role of technology and the blogosphere or infosphere, the role of cyberspace, that is, as you said at the beginning, the build is not, there will be no more the separation between reality and cyberspace because we live now, because of the Internet of Things, big data flows, and everything, we live in an environment that we can exit. So even the anarchic approach of people that think that can escape from the cyberspace is nowadays no more practicable. There is no more this option. So if we understand that we live in the cyberspace, there is no option to exit, and we have to stay and to cooperate, and most of all, to be conscious of the instrument, to use the instrument correctly, and that we as individuals, we as the people, have a lot of power, and the problem is how to use this power. And because another issue, important issues, is always to think that if we have some power, there is also other people that can use this power against. That's why it's so important the role of cybersecurity, because and to look at cybersecurity as a global common good, that we have all to share. So we need an approach, an holistic approach that involves all the policies at global level and coordination of different policies for regulation or international standard to create this common ground in each and in interdisciplinary way. So we should have, like in UK, they start to educate the people on technology and cyber security in each sector. So in health, in the e-government, in economics, in finance. So if we understand that cyber security will cut transversally all these important sectors, we understand the importance to invest resources and our collective intelligence in this field.
Right. No, that's very important. Those are very important points that you made, and very good analysis. I'm sure it's going to benefit our global viewers and listeners to understand that. Now, in the continuing debate over the competitiveness of nations in cyberspace, no topic engenders more argument or create less understanding than the role of the government. Government's proper role in cyberspace is probably as a catalyst and a challenger, and it is most certainly to encourage or even push industries to raise their aspirations and move to higher levels of competitive performance, even though this process is not going to be easy and it could be very difficult. So, do you think the governments are doing justice to that role?
Yes, I think that the globalization, in the rhetoric of globalization, we see that the sovereign state play no more important role like in the past. We see that, of course, there are other important players, like you mentioned the big digital companies that are a state in a state, are very important players. They think look like, for example, Google or Facebook. They have so important power that also can challenge the state. But this is we have to understand. The government should understand that in cyberspace they can have an important role. I think that the state, as an innovator, could be the driver. Can be the nation state can get back the importance and the authority that they had in the past century to use the role of technology and in the cyberspace as a driver to innovation, to growth, and to job creation. So I think that the state can come back on as a real great actor on the most important challenges that we are facing, and also is very important the role of public and private partnership. So on one hand, the sovereign state can't come back to the success that ideologically they had in the past because we live in the globalization. But on the other side, because of the issues of the security is an issue that you just can't face on the national state. Of course, for some part of this, it's important that in the cybersecurity sector, they can play an important role. Investing in the cybersecurity field, there can be spillovers on and effect on the social and economic level. Join a partnership with the private sector, using some incentives or stimulus on that side can be so very important. Another example, the transferring of knowledge and know-how from university and the research center to the economic side, to the companies, and in some way foster this important transferring of knowledge from public sector to private sector can build important infrastructure that is not only material but also virtual and immaterial. So the government, the state, play a very important role. It was a book, a very interesting book, wrote that professor, Italian professor, who was a woman, wrote just last year, called State Innovator. And he mentioned all the most important shift in the innovation and in revolution in internet come from investment, coming from state investment. So we have to recognize that the role of all the most important states play in that field, and on the other hand, we have to understand that the state is not more at the center of the scene, but can be an important active player in building and coordinating with the civil society and the economic side to grow not only the prosperity of the nation, but also of the region and macro region in the world. So I very agree on this.
Yes, yes, no, that is very true. Now, one of the primary challenges facing policymakers is how to balance massive technological change and simultaneously manage the new generation of risks to its security from cyberspace and because of cyberspace in geospace and space. While the government has critical responsibilities for fundamentals like primary and secondary education, national infrastructure, research in areas of broad national concerns such as healthcare, pollution, poverty, corruption, and all so on. And none of these, to me, it seems that none of these national concerns plays a priority when compared to cybersecurity and cyberspace today. The government has a vital role in helping secure the cyberspace and shape the goals of cyberspace, its investors, innovators, entrepreneurs, businesses, employees, and educators through policies that are sensible and workable in so many different areas. So, the manner in which the cyber policies are shaped will in turn determine the behavior and success of cyberspace and cybersecurity. The government should aim to encourage sustained investment in cyber skills, in innovation, and in physical and virtual cyber assets. Now, while there is a need to harmonize cyberspace laws and standards that affect cybersecurity, given the nature of the internet and the borderless cyberspace, developing global laws and standards rather than ones that are unique to each nation is a fundamental necessity. Do you see any movement in that direction?
I think that it was very interesting that I was reading the U.S. National Security Report and President Obama, and put the climate change inside the policy of security, national security. So it means that again, if we understand that the cyber security, the cyber general, have to be approached as an holistic approach. So if we see the importance of the role that cyberspace plays in our lives, it will be so important from government to understand that shaping the rule, the legislation on that side, coordinating with other states that define international standard, could play an important and foster prosperity for everybody. But again, the forces of fragmentation, the fear that sharing ideas, sharing information, data, knowledge, in some way can attack the competitive advantage that some of the states can be reached in some, in some sector, could be something can block this important attitude to cooperate. So on one end, I think that the approach has to be as a global vision, has to be an holistic approach as to involve as much possible private, individual, government, public sector. The public sector has to play the important role, in particular, to set up the legal perimeter of the legal limits of the action in that field, and leave to the individuals, through the self-regulation of the freedom of the research, the freedom of speech, and so on, the right limit. And it's important for me as a professor that the most important thing is to invest in education and in research. So the role of academia in partnership with research centers and science, technology, and private sectors play an important role. Because if the government don't help us to pursue the important goal that technologies give us, we can do this by ourselves. So I think that the most important and the message that I want to leave with this interview is that the technology can really empower individuals. That disintermediate the state. So the failure of some state doesn't mean that it's the failure of the cyber security of the cyberspace, because the individual, if they are conscious, they are educated to use the instrument, they can do by themselves. So for the first time, the individual, the civil society can play an important role. The coordination of the collective action on internet, the coordination of people like you and me, and through partnership, through sharing of ideas and of information, can play an important role. Because of the nature of the cyberspace, the government can control, have the power, and more they want to control, more they lose. And
yes.
So the technology and the cyberspace and the cybersecurity that I really understand, because I'm at the beginning of the studies of these issues, I really understand that it's involve security in energy, food security, security in different fields, not only the security about terrorist attack of hackers and so on, but because of the pervasive action of the technology and cyberspace will be not only around us, but inside us. I mean, the IA, artificial intelligence, all the combination between devices and the healthcare and all these things are so pervasive that are reshaping our nature, the relationship between people and state and state. So how the way through the important and important countries look is important, at this important look at this important approach will make the difference in the global international order. So I think that in the near future we will see how the different balance of power will be reshaped. So we will have China and the Asian on one side, and we have hopefully, I think so, US and Europe together. The role of Russia in this scenario is critical, and also how much is important the role of cyberspace in the fight of the terrorism. As everybody can see how the terrorists of Daesh and Islamic State use the cyberspace for propaganda to collect data, information, how in the cyberspace they can finance a lot of these actors, how they can coordinate. So if we understand how much is important the our role, our power as an individual in the cyberspace, we can also understand the difference between the good and the evil, and we can in some way be owner of our destiny. This is the most important. We don't, like in the last century, the state that think about us. Europe, because maybe US in other parts in Europe, and we have an approach that the government take care of the individuals. The cyberspace and to be conscious how much is important the security in cyberspace, the role of risk management that can come from individuals to the business to the government, how much is important to take care of this issue, because it's an issue also of survival. So I think that I'm very happy to live and to be involved in these important issues as a beginner now, but I'm confident and I'm conscious of the challenges and the risk and the potential and the opportunity that are at the stake.
No, you made a really interesting point there that it is not a time of control. You are absolutely right. It is not a time to control. It is a time for collaboration and cooperation to manage this kind of complex, integrated, and interdependent security risks that we all face in cyberspace and because of cyberspace. Now, there are many governments whose focus has historically been more on compliance over security. If you see all our governance models, across nations, they are all focused on compliance. Now, this is expected to result in regular and very pervasive data breaches, which in turn will lead to very reactive regulatory attempts to improve data protection. Now, in the coming years, nations will likely struggle with the challenges of cybersecurity because its responses will often be limited to its own geographical territories, despite the trans-border nature of internet infrastructure and in spite of the common understanding that unless all nations and all its components, that is government, industries, organizations, and academia, work together, cybersecurity cannot be achieved. Do you think will nations and its components ever be able to work together?
Uh, Sometimes we forget that we are the state. So it is not an artificial construction, and an object is a subject that built by people, and so as individuals we have some forces that is against cooperation and egoism and individualism sometimes can prevail. As you know, all the sociological studies say that the one of the problems of technologies is that they empower individual, but also they isolate the individual inside the society, because you can reach whatever you want just to use the technologies, and so sometimes the fragmentation, the isolation that I would say the narcissism that we face the relationship that we can have in the cyberspace. There are more, for example, the private relationship. We don't sometimes. I know that the young students use a lot of or very much this kind of approach on the social network. So on one end, the technology can empower individuals and isolate him from the context. On the other hand, by nature, the flows of information, data, and knowledge give the power if we coordinate. So it's always important, depending of the nature of the human being, that reflect the nature and the culture of the state. So there are states like in Europe that are more individual, like also maybe most of them are US, and are other important big states like China that has the sense of community. But on the other hand, because they have the sense of community, they don't. The government block the the use of technology in the same, we could say, in the Arab countries. They are more, they have the sense of the group, of the team. And I have to say that unlikely we lost in Europe because the modernity gives the individual more important, no? And the religion in Europe don't have this important, we have the secular society, secular and ideological approach now. So the sense of God, the sense of the religion is a way to unify people, no? So, and it's important to understand that culturally the technology can improve this sense of isolation. And this is in the nature of the human being. So, if we understand that we can have the opportunity to coordinate, to share, and we see in the shared economy, now the future is into the empathy in the sharing economy. All the services are from the car, from the internet, and other important goods are shared. So maybe the nature of the cyberspace and the technology that we experience daily in the daily life can we understand that we can reach a common goal using that. So it's also always a problem of consciousness, of ethics, and how the people, a single individual, feel itself inside the society, from which family they come. So it's different forces and different cultures. So if you ask me if I'm optimistic, I have culturally an approach, a realistic approach. So sometimes people are egoists, and the state also have this kind of approach. So if we understand that could be an egoistic cooperation, and we can achieve common success, common and common ground, just coordinate all together, maybe we can achieve in some part of the world some kind of cooperation result. But I don't think ideologically in the idea that the technology will unify the world, will give us the idea of peace and security and so on. So I'm more a pragmatic and realistic approach, because I believe in the human, and the human have different forces inside. So we created the technology, but technology is an instrument that we can use against ourselves, against our society, against the state, and so we have to manage this dual nature that is inside the state and the human being. So maybe I say this because I live in Italy and in Europe, where we are experiencing for example, the flows of migrants, and we build our Europe on solidarity, but and within the treaties of European Union is mentioned to be the solidarity among nations. But when this is the problem of migrants, we see that we don't want to build a wall, not wants to guess these people coming from abroad. And when we look at the common market, we see that only some giant of important states have the hegemony and the power to do so. And so we are very critical. We set up a union, European Union, that for US, for other important countries, was a model of unification, of to put all the values, the culture all together. But we see that we can. These values are important, not are just on the treaties, but when problems and crises like the economic crisis and the terroristic attacks and problem of migrants come, we see that this building is an empty house, is an empty common house. So we face the problem of terrorists. We don't have a common defense policy. We don't have, we don't want to share our information on the intelligence side. We don't have a common standard on cyber security. We don't invest in infrastructure. So, or the most important countries that do not see don't want to share the infrastructure with us. And so there are many problems that come when problems arise. The economic crisis show, for example, in the case of the Greece, how the Germany that, you know, or other important countries that has the Germany didn't want to help the Greece. This is an example of when you touch the private interest or the interest of some country, you see that you start to build a wall or you start to be egoist in that approach. So if we put this at the local level and individual level, I'm not so much, I would say, optimistic, but it doesn't mean that I'm pessimistic, I'm realistic. And I think that if we work all together to achieve these some steps and look forward with a vision, and we have a cooperation with different countries that we share values and principle, we can achieve. And of course, the importance of education, the importance of academia, the importance of the elite in the international order can play an important role, because we have to also to think that there is a lot of poverty around the world, and a lot of people don't think about cybersecurity, doesn't have a mobile, and the first problem that they face is to hit and to survive. So and technology can help on this side. So we have to put together the elite, the people that are investing and effort and resources are on the way to lead the world. So in the academia, in government, in research centers like yours, and companies, and to be together and to, in a few people, we can really create important spillover that can reach a lot of other people in the world. And the most important thing is to understand that, to be conscious that that for me, this is my philosophy, to live and to be conscious of my role in this world. So studying and having this interesting interview and understanding some important problem that I never faced before, I understand that I feel to be a player, an important player. I can play an important role if we coordinate all together in create this consciousness around the world and make really important improvement by our single structure, because even a single and flexible structure like a research center, like a small company, can play an important role. So now the role of the single individual or small group can really make the difference against a single state. And the role of creativity, the collective intelligence, the coordination among people that have the same values or idea can play. So we can do the opposite of these terrorists. You imagine that they create a state, but it's without territory. They use technology for all these things, but there are a few groups, but they are so strong. So if you change, I'm using a paradox, you know, they create the evil just by using the cyberspace, using coordination, having a strong idea, even is wrong of the religion and so on. but we see that they are so powerful because also with the instrument, with the use of the cyberspace and the technology, and we see how much our freedom, we can be empowered by the technologies, and through the coordination, the sharing knowledge, and the common understanding can reach important goals. And
Yes. 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 Go ahead, please. No, I think that is a very good advice that you gave and very good observations. And Professor Valerio, your words matter. What you say makes a difference across so many institutions and so many nations. So I hope that today's dialogue that we had will help each and every nation understand the complex challenges that they are facing in this cyberspace. And we are very honored that you spend so much of your time to come on Risk Roundup and help analyze the complex challenges that nations face. And we are very grateful that you took so time to evaluate this very complex risk that we, each and every nation, each and every government, industries, organizations, and academia face. So thank you so much for that, Professor Valerio.
thank you to you.
Now, as nations spend heavily on creating the necessary cyberspace infrastructure to bring more individuals online to derive benefits from social and economic development opportunities that the internet provides, the information communication and digitalization technologies provide, cyberspace is expected to face much greater threats in the coming years. As progress and development in cyberspace also comes with security concerns, nations need to build national strategies that enhance information sharing between and across NGIOAI with law enforcement cooperation. In addition, each nation needs to collaborate with its industries, organizations, and academia to come up with the working cyberspace standards for both domestic and international purposes, create policies that create an environment in which cyberspace innovations succeed and can gain competitive advantage, create the right mix of collaboration between industries and academia, and also incentives for educational institutions and students, thereby attracting students to acquire the skills necessary to become the workers with the skills matched to the market need of the cyberspace. Invest strategically in cyberspace infrastructure and its research and development. Enable cyberspace talent mobility. Work aggressively to support the education of a modern workforce and develop better cybersecurity norms for stability and security in not only cyberspace but geospace and space. Risk Group Cybersecurity Risk Research Center is created for this very purpose so that we can collectively identify, evaluate, and manage the risk facing NGIOA in CGS, discuss, debate, and define necessary framework, structure, processes, tools, and technologies to manage the security risk of not only the digital global age, but also of the coming technological superconvergence. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict, and it is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security. So if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch the Risk Roundup videos, or hear the Risk Roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com. Do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayshree Pandya, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.